The storm arrived the way most disasters do, quietly, politely, and with absolutely no respect for human scheduling. 1 minute the outpost's external sensors were humming along, reporting nothing more dramatic than light atmospheric snowfall. The next minute, every alarm that could make noise decided to express its feelings at once. I muted them. Experience had taught me that panic sounds did not improve survival odds. The relay station sat alone on the ice like a forgotten coffee mug, half buried, overworked, and underappreciated. My job was simple: keep the signal alive, don't freeze to death, and try not to think too hard about how far away civilization actually was. Humans had a long tradition of calling in hospitable places, temporary assignments, and then acting surprised when they became personal. Power dipped, lights flickered, and the temperature gauge slid downward with an enthusiasm I did not share. I muttered something about filing a complaint with the weather and pulled my jacket tighter. The heater groaned like it had been personally offended by the cold, and then settled into a sulky, uneven rhythm. That was when the door chimed. Visitors were rare. Visitors during an ice storm were rarer. Visitors who didn't immediately look miserable were practically mythical. When the door slid open, she stepped inside with the confidence of someone who assumed the universe generally made room for her. Tall, furred, fox-like, with ears dusted in snow and a tail that swayed as if it had opinions. Her eyes scanned the room, bright and sharp, and then settled on me. "You are the human," she said, not as a question. I nodded, because that seemed safer than staring. "I am," I said. "And you are extremely far from where you're supposed to be. The storm redirected my transport," she replied calmly, brushing snow from her sleeve. "Your structure was the nearest source of shelter. Also heat." That last word lingered. I pretended not to notice. "Right. Shelter I can do. Heat is currently negotiating its terms." I gestured vaguely at the heater, which responded by clicking ominously. She tilted her head, ears twitching. "It is insufficient." "Yes," I said. "It often is." She stepped further inside, the door sealing behind her with a hiss that felt a lot like commitment. Her gaze swept over the small space, the equipment racks, the narrow bench, the single sleeping pad folded against the wall. Her tail flicked once. "You are alone. Occupational hazard," I said. "We don't usually hibernate in groups." She blinked. "You do not?" "No. Definitely not. Humans are very much a personal space species." I paused, realizing I was standing about a meter from her and the temperature had dropped again. "Generally." She considered this. "Curious. On my world, storms of this magnitude require communal warming." I coughed. "We have heaters." Her eyes shifted back to the malfunctioning unit. "You have a disagreement. That's one way to put it." Another gust battered the station, the structure creaking in protest. The lights dimmed further. The ambient temperature dropped enough that my breath fogged. She folded her arms, thoughtful. "Your species lacks fur. We compensate with optimism and poor decision-making." "I see." Her gaze lingered on me. "You radiate heat regardless." "That's just stress," I said quickly. She stepped closer, curiosity outweighing caution. "You are warmer than the environment." "Yes, well, evolution did what it could." The distance between us had narrowed without either of us formally agreeing to it. I was acutely aware of it. She seemed pleased. "We should conserve energy," she said. "That's what I was thinking," I replied, then immediately wondered why my voice sounded like I was agreeing to something I hadn't fully understood yet. "Movement generates heat loss," she continued. "Stillness is optimal." "Absolutely," I said. "Big fan of stillness." She gestured toward the folded thermal blanket. "Shared insulation improves efficiency." I stared at the blanket. The blanket stared back, silently accusing me of cowardice. "Just to be clear," I said, "humans don't normally solve problems this way." She smiled, sharp and amused. "Yet you have not refused." "That's because refusal would be inefficient," I said, hating how reasonable that sounded. The heater clicked, wheezed, and finally shut off entirely. The silence that followed was very loud. She did not hesitate. She unfolded the blanket and settled herself beside me on the bench with practiced ease, leaving precisely enough space to suggest choice while making it obvious the choice was temporary. "For survival," she said. "For survival," I echoed. The blanket went around us. Warmth followed almost immediately, the difference startling. She sighed softly, a sound of genuine relief. "You are very efficient at warming things," she noted. I swallowed. "I've been told I run hot." She leaned back slightly, tail curling closer, as if testing the limits of physics. "This is acceptable." "Great," I said. "Glad we're aligned." The storm howled outside, relentless, unconcerned with interspecies etiquette. Inside, the small space filled with shared heat and unspoken calculations. "Humans," she said after a moment, "are more adaptable than expected." "We have to be," I replied. "The universe keeps putting us in awkward situations." She glanced at me, eyes bright with amusement. "Awkward?" "Professionally awkward," I clarified. She settled more comfortably, the blanket shifting. "Then we will endure this professionally." I nodded, staring very hard at the opposite wall, acutely aware of how warm it had become. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Neither, apparently, did the universe's sense of humor. The blanket arrangement had been intended as a temporary solution. Temporary, in my experience, was one of those words that lied politely until circumstances forced honesty. The temperature continued to drop. The storm outside showed no concern for intent, comfort, or interspecies etiquette. Inside the station, shared warmth became less a suggestion and more a mathematical necessity. She adjusted the blanket with a deliberate tug, closing what she referred to as inefficient gaps. Each movement was precise, purposeful, and accompanied by a quiet commentary that sounded suspiciously instructional. "Your posture increases heat loss," she observed. "I'm sitting," I said. "That's about as postured as I get." "You are angled away," she replied. "I will correct this." Before I could respond, she shifted closer, shoulder brushing mine. It was light contact. Casual. Entirely reasonable. My body reacted like it had been personally challenged. "This position," she continued, "minimizes surface exposure." "Of course it does," I said. "Surface exposure is very wasteful." She hummed in agreement, clearly pleased that I was following along. Her species, it seemed, appreciated cooperation. Outside, the wind slammed into the station again, rattling the walls. Inside, my internal temperature climbed in ways that had very little to do with weather. "You appear tense," she said. "I'm conserving energy. Your muscles are rigid. That's a human feature." She studied me with open curiosity. "Is it adaptive?" "No," I admitted. "But it's traditional." She shifted again, settling more comfortably, tail curling in closer like an extra layer of insulation that I had not requested but was not about to refuse. The warmth was undeniable now, steady and effective. "Your species overcomplicates warmth," she said. "We like to be thorough." She tilted her head. "On my world, this would be considered efficient bonding." I cleared my throat. "On my world, this would be considered a conversation." She smiled. "We are conversing." "Yes," I said. "Very thermally." Her ears flicked in what I was beginning to recognize as amusement. "You speak as if warmth is dangerous." "It can be," I said. "Humans have a long history of misinterpreting situations involving proximity." "Misinterpreting in what way?" "In ways that require paperwork." She seemed to accept this explanation, though I suspected she didn't fully believe it. Her focus returned to the blanket, which she adjusted again, tucking it tighter around us. "We should conserve energy," she said. I nodded. "Less movement. Less distance." "That too." Silence followed, thick but not uncomfortable. The kind of silence that invited awareness. I became acutely conscious of breathing patterns, shared warmth, the subtle rise and fall of her chest beside mine. "You are warmer now," she observed. "Working as intended." She leaned back slightly, resting more weight against me. "Your body heat output increases under stress." "That's unfortunate." "Fascinating," she corrected. I stared straight ahead. "Just so we're clear, this is still for survival." "Of course," she said smoothly. "If survival were no longer required, would you disengage?" The question landed with far more force than the storm outside. "I would," I said after a moment. "Yes." She considered this. "Even if warmth remained beneficial?" "Yes." Her tail flicked once, thoughtfully. "Humans are strange. We get that a lot." She adjusted again, shifting her legs slightly, testing angles and contact like a scientist refining an experiment. "This alignment increases shared heat retention." I laughed despite myself. "You're very committed to optimization. Failure to optimize results in unnecessary suffering. Humans specialize in unnecessary suffering." She glanced up at me. "Yet you endure." "We're stubborn." The heater chose that moment to make a hopeful noise, sputtering as if considering a return. Both of us froze. "Do you wish to reactivate it?" she asked. I hesitated. The warmth between us was stable, effective, comfortable in a way I had not anticipated. "Not yet," I said carefully. "It might overload." She nodded. "Prudent." She settled again, this time without commentary, her confidence unshaken. I realized then that she was entirely at ease. For her, this was simple. Logical. A problem solved with proximity and trust. For me, it was a masterclass in restraint. "You are very controlled," she said quietly. "Experience." "With storms?" "With choices." She studied me for a long moment, eyes softening. "On my world, restraint is rare in such conditions." "On mine," I said, "it's how we show respect." She seemed genuinely intrigued by that. "Then this is respectful warmth?" "Yes," I said. "Professionally respectful." She smiled again, that sharp, knowing curve of her mouth. "I like human professionalism." The storm roared on, uncaring. Inside, we remained still, sharing heat, conserving energy, and discovering that warmth, when chosen carefully, had a way of complicating even the simplest survival plans. The station hummed differently before the lights came back. Not brighter at first, just steadier, like it had finally made a decision. A low tone vibrated through the floor, followed by a soft blink from the control panel. "Emergency power. Limited. Temporary." Enough to complicate things. She noticed immediately. Of course she did. "The system has stabilized," she said. "Your heat source may function again." "I heard it," I replied. "It does that when it wants attention." The heater gave a weak click, as if offended by being discussed. Warm air did not yet flow, but the promise of it lingered in the room like a third participant. She shifted slightly, not away, just enough to make it clear the next movement would be intentional. "If artificial heat resumes, shared warmth is no longer required." "Correct," I said, perhaps too quickly. She studied my face, not with teasing this time, but with genuine curiosity. "You sound disappointed." "I sound cautious." "Those are different." "They overlap." Her tail flicked once, slow and thoughtful. "On my world, this would be the moment of decision." "That sounds dramatic." "It is efficient," she countered. "Need ends. Choice begins." I swallowed. "Humans tend to complicate that transition." "So I have observed." The heater sputtered again, a brief rush of warm air escaping before it cut out, uncertain. The temperature rose by a fraction. Not enough to matter. Enough to remind us options existed. She adjusted the blanket slightly, not tighter, not looser. "Neutral. If warmth were no longer necessary," she said carefully, "would you prefer distance?" "Yes," I said. Then, after a beat, "Unless distance was also a choice." She smiled at that. Not sharp this time. Softer. Curious. Explain. Humans differentiate between need and want, I said. When we blur them, things get messy. Her ears angled forward. Messy how? In ways that hurt people. She considered that. Your species fears unintended bonds. We fear unchosen ones. That implies chosen bonds are acceptable. Very, I said. Silence settled again, different from before. Not tense. Expectant. You have been very careful, she said. You have not taken advantage of proximity, vulnerability, or instinct. I've been trying not to freeze, I replied. And yet you monitor my reactions. You ask permission without words? She tilted her head. Is this also survival? In a way, I said. Humans don't do well with regret. Her tail curled closer again, slow, deliberate. On my world, hesitation in warmth is rare. Desire is acted upon. That sounds sufficient. It is, she said. But it leaves little room for choice. The heater gave up entirely, falling silent. The temperature dipped again, making the conversation feel less theoretical. She looked at the control panel, then back at me. You could attempt another restart. I could. Should you? I glanced at the blanket, at the space between us that wasn't really space at all. If it fails, we lose backup power. And if it succeeds? Then we won't need this. She nodded. Then the question is not technical. No, I said. It's personal. She shifted, turning slightly so she could see me fully. Her confidence remained, but something else had joined it, respect maybe. Or interest sharpened by challenge. Say you choose to remain, she said. Not because of cold. Because you wish to. I exhaled slowly. Then it stops being survival. And becomes? Consent, I said. She tasted the word. Consent is attractive. I laughed softly. You're not helping. I am being honest. So am I said. And honestly, I don't want warmth to be an excuse. She leaned back, considering me in a way that felt far more intimate than proximity ever had. Humans are dangerous. That's new. You resist instinct. You delay gratification. You turn simple acts into meaningful ones. Her eyes gleamed. That creates tension. I'm very good at tension. So I have noticed. The heater clicked again, one last hopeful sound before falling quiet. The temperature dropped another notch. The universe, it seemed, had made its position clear. She drew the blanket slightly tighter, but paused, watching me. Waiting. This, she said, is where I defer. I met her gaze. To me? To your choice. The weight of it settled heavily, far heavier than the blanket. I was aware of everything, the warmth we shared, the storm outside, the quiet hum of the station barely holding together. Okay, I said. She didn't move. I'm choosing to stay warm, I continued. Not because I have to. And the rules? She asked softly. We keep them, I said. We respect each other. We don't pretend this is something it's not. She smiled, slow and approving. You choose warmth with intention. Yes. She leaned in just enough to close the last distance, not rushing, not claiming. The warmth intensified, but so did the calm. Then I accept, she said. Knowingly. We settled again, this time without the pretense of necessity. The blanket remained, but it felt different now, not a barrier against the cold, but an agreement. You realize, she said lightly, that on my world this would still be considered bonding. I can live with that, I replied. As long as it's mutual. It is. The storm outside continued uncaring. Inside, the choice held, steady and deliberate. Warmth, shared not by accident or instinct, but by agreement, an entirely human complication that, somehow, made the cold easier to endure. The storm didn't end dramatically. No sudden silence, no heroic sunrise. It simply grew tired. The wind softened first, then the constant battering faded into something closer to background noise. The station noticed before I did, the sensors chiming quietly as if afraid to jinx it. She noticed immediately. "The atmospheric pressure is stabilizing," she said. "Rescue range will return soon." I nodded. "Figures. The universe hates timing." She glanced at me, amused. "You sound disappointed." "I'm acknowledging reality." The heater chose that moment to finally succeed. Warm air flowed steadily from the vent, confident now, reliable in the way machines only become once they've already caused stress. The temperature climbed quickly, efficiently, without regard for emotional consequences. She watched the display, then looked back at me. "Artificial warmth has resumed." So it has. The blanket still rested around us. No longer necessary. No longer an excuse. We didn't move. "Interesting," she said. "You have not disengaged." "I was waiting for a formal announcement," I replied. "Maybe a countdown." She smiled, that familiar sharp curve softened by something like fondness. "On my world, this is where participants separate." "On my," I said, "we usually take a moment." "A moment for what?" "To acknowledge that something happened." She considered that, tail flicking slowly. "And what happened?" "We survived," I said. "With cooperation." Her ears twitched. "And warmth. Efficient warmth," I added. She shifted slightly, finally loosening the blanket, though she didn't remove it entirely. "Your species treats shared experiences as significant." "We're sentimental," I admitted. "It's a flaw." "I disagree." She leaned back, stretching with the casual grace of someone completely unembarrassed. "It makes you memorable." That, somehow, felt more dangerous than the cold had ever been. The console chimed again. Incoming signal. Rescue inbound. Paperwork inevitable. She glanced at the display, then back to me. "My report will require accuracy." I winced. "How accurate?" She tapped the screen, reading aloud. "Human demonstrated exceptional thermal resilience. Exhibited restraint under prolonged proximity. Prioritized consent over instinctual efficiency." I blinked. "That's flattering. There is more," she continued, clearly enjoying this. "Human warmth classified as both effective and comforting." "That's going on record?" "Yes." I sighed. "Humans are going to regret that." She smiled. "You should. It improves your reputation." I finally shifted carefully, respectfully increasing the distance between us. The warmth lingered anyway, stubborn as memory. "Well," I said, "I suppose this is where we pretend this was purely professional." She tilted her head. "Do humans often pretend?" "Constantly." She stood, stretching fully now, tail swaying behind her. "Then let us pretend competently." I stood as well, suddenly aware of how small the station felt again now that the crisis had passed. "You're welcome to stay until pickup arrives." "I will," she said. "Your shelter has proven reliable." "And the company?" She met my gaze. "Adequate." I laughed. "High praise." The rescue signal pinged confirmation. Minutes, not hours. The storm's grip was gone, leaving behind quiet and the faint awkwardness of survival no longer being the main topic. She stepped closer once more, just enough to make the air between us feel familiar. "If circumstances were different," she said casually, "this would not end here." "Circumstances are always different," I replied. "That's kind of our thing." She nodded. "Then perhaps they will be again." The implication settled comfortably, like the last bit of retained heat in a cooling room. When the transport finally arrived, the station felt emptier than it should have. She paused at the door, glancing back once. "Humans," she said thoughtfully, "are classified incorrectly." "Oh? Yes. You are not weak for lacking fur." "That's good to hear." "You are dangerous," she continued, "because you choose warmth when you do not need it." The door slid open, cold air briefly rushing in before sealing again behind her. I stood alone in the steady hum of a functioning heater, surrounded by warmth I hadn't earned this time. I shook my head, smiling despite myself. Humans had crossed the stars, survived hostile worlds, and rewritten survival rules through stubbornness and choice. And somehow, we still managed to make staying warm complicated. I wouldn't have it any other way.